today I wanted to focus on emotional intelligence, self-control. Um, some people call it emotional intelligence. Um, Others call it emotional self-control. But regardless, I wanted to focus on um, just understanding what that really is, and then being able to apply it to like situations, right? Because so many times we as people are responsive instead of responsible. And what I say, or what I mean when I say that is something happens, we respond, and the way we respond ultimately dictates whatever precedes that, whatever comes after it. Because um, if you don't understand that you're being responsive, you'll make a decision that has consequences that you didn't think about before you responded. And when you're responsible, you think about those things after you feel something, and then you respond in a way that benefits you best. Because when you don't, so many times you get this thing that I call emotional remorse, and it's similar to buyer's remorse. And buyer's remorse is, hypothetically speaking, you go buy a car, and you love the car, and you love all the things about the car, but you hate the car payment. But you still go forward and you buy the car. And then 2 months down the line, you realize that you were emotionally high when you made the purchase, and now you don't want the car because the responsibility of making the car payment is a consequence that you didn't think about when you were so excited about the purchase. And so you can take that and you can apply that to the emotional response to the things that you have, or the emotional response to the things that happen to you, or you feel like happen to you. But don't always be a victim because things aren't always happening to you. But that's neither here or there. But just think about that the next time something happens or you feel something, and then you make a decision based on what you feel instead of what you know. Um, because so many times, like I said, we feel something and then we make a decision. And so, fellas in particular, um, I don't think it's covered enough or people talk about it enough, but horniness, being horny is an emotion. It's not something that you feel all the time, and it's not something that is constant, but it is an emotion. And when you don't understand that it's an emotion, what happens is you feel it, and then you do something about it, and then there's consequences that could or could not proceed what happened. But in a lot of cases, I think men have kids with women that they're not in love with, or women that they don't want to take care of for the rest of their life, or um, lay down with somebody because they felt something. Oh, I feel horny. I need to do something. I need to make something happen. And then you lay down with a person and they get pregnant. That emotional choice that you made now has 18 years, or really a lifetime of consequences. Not that the child is bad, but the way that you got to go about it. Because now you may have child support because you didn't intend on taking care of the child. Or you have a hard relationship with the mother of the child because you never got to know her. You never understood that she may be like this after having kids, or understood that she could make poor choices, or she might not be a good mother, but you didn't think about that when the emotion of horniness took over you. And now that emotion is dictating your life essentially. Same thing with an STD. You feel in some way, you go out to a club, you sleep with somebody you don't know, you didn't pay attention to them, and now you have consequences that follow you for the rest of your life, or affect your health in a way that you weren't set up to take care of. And that's just I wanted to focus on that because I don't think men take enough responsibility for taking responsibility for the way that they feel and then making a decision that again benefits them best. Because you can feel that way and go home and take a cold shower and be done with it. There's no consequences for taking a cold shower other than being cold. But if you would have thought about the way you felt and understood that it was an emotion, and that you are a soul in control of a body, and that your emotions don't control you, you would have thought about the consequences that preceded an action, and then thought about the benefit or the consequence of that action. And so I just want to keep that in mind. But that same thing goes for tiredness, right? If you have a decision, or you want to make the decision to, I'm going to be disciplined and I'm going to go to the gym, and then day 3 comes around and you say, well, I'm too tired to go. You have now let that emotion dictate how your health is going to go. Or if you have a job responsibility and now you are calling in because you're quote unquote tired. Tired is a feeling. And if you get up and do something, most times that feeling will go away. But because you don't know you're tired, what happens is, or not that you don't know you're tired, you don't know that you're in control of your feelings, or you're not in control of them. What happens is now you make a decision that you may regret, because that one day not going to the gym could lead to 5 days not going to the gym, and 5 days not going to the gym could lead to not even going back. But if you would have took control of that emotion up front, it could have stopped you from having a consequence of maybe, this is extreme, but having bad health, um, or losing your job because this isn't just the one time you do this. You keep doing this. You always do this. And again, these are, you know, um, examples, but I mean, you can think about your everyday life. In some cases, um, what I've seen is, and again, I was speaking about men in this case, but something like you at a club, somebody step on your shoe, or you at a party, somebody step on your shoe. Now you in a fight because you mad about somebody stepping on your shoe, and you ain't thinking about what that other person might be going through or whatever, and then they turn around and do something back to you. Now you got a black eye, bloody nose, or and even if you want to fight, right? Just to say something, now something has happened to you because you didn't think about the consequences of being reactive instead of responsible. Because the responsible person, the emotionally intelligent person, could have or would have simply, moved his foot out the way, let it go. It's his shoe, not made it a big deal. But somebody who's responsive is quick to respond. And then, you can take that and go into your relationships with your girlfriend or your teacher or your whoever and say, you having a bad day, and they say something that doesn't necessarily feel good to you, and because it doesn't feel good to you, you quick to respond, and within that response, you might yell, right? So now you're creating trauma that in the moment you might feel good about that release, about letting it go right there, but you don't know what that's going to do for the relationship long term, whether you've broken trust, whether you have, created something that now you gotta go apologizing for, and not that apology is a bad thing, but now there's a break in the continuity, or the togetherness of the relationship because you're being responsive instead of responsible. And so I just want you to think about that when you're going through your everyday life, right? I remember a young lady when I had first got into the service industry. She was having a rough day, and then she felt like people were picking on her, and then she decided, well, you know what, I'm gonna quit. And even I've had younger men do that while on a job, having a frustrating day at work, and all of a sudden quit and not think of, do I have a plan in the back? Do I have something to go on after this? If I just quit my job, are my bills still going to be paid? My car going to get repo? Whatever the case may be. And then later on down the line, we talked about it earlier. She's now that person has emotional remorse because they made a decision that didn't necessarily benefit their life, and now they're out of a job, you're out of security, and all of that stemmed from not having self control, or the ability to self soothe yourself, calm yourself down, look within and say, well, what's going on with me? I know there's some outside influences, but what's going on deep within me, and how can I change my perception about this so that I can still have a benefit on the other side? Because the benefit is me being able to calm myself down, being strong enough to know myself and being able to calm myself down, and then maintain my job. And if this is a space that doesn't work for me, starting to put a plan into place so that I have something to go off of when this does. Okay, this job isn't working for me, so I'm gonna start to put in my 2 weeks notice. While I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice, I'm gonna go out and start applying for new jobs. Start um, doing interviews and things like that so that I know that if I'm making this decision, it is the best decision for me because I've thought it out. And just like I said, man, it's just big. And I'm challenging men in general to, start to hold yourself responsible and not be so quick to point the finger and say what she did or he did. I think it's real weird when somebody says my child made me mad. Like your 5 year old made you mad? You sure that's what's really going on? How does a child have that much power over you or have the ability to make you mad? Or are you already mad? And because you haven't dealt with your anger, anybody or anything can rub up against your insecurities, especially after you had a long day or a frustrating day. How can you put the responsibility of your anger on your 5 year old or your 10-year old who is just learning how to do life, who is just trying to figure it out? And yeah, you may have told them that 1,000 times not to do that or how to do that, and because they didn't do it right, now you angry, right? And so your anger is your responsibility, just like your happiness is your responsibility. Nobody else, nobody should have the power to control you in a space that now they do something and it doesn't feel good to you, and now you're being responsive to what they did or said or how they made you feel, right? And you got to know yourself to be able to self soothe. When I'm angry now, when I get frustrated, I've gotten to the point where I've dealt with it so much that for the most part, and I'm not perfect, but for the most part, I can express that I'm frustrated or I'm getting upset or I'm angry. And that's the extent of how I need to respond. Now, if I need to do something on the other end of that, now I'm putting a plan in action so that I'm being responsible because I have a family. I have kids who are looking up to me, so I can't be raising my voice when me and my wife have a disagreement. I have a job where I lead people. I can't be woofing at somebody or yelling at somebody and now expecting them to, be in a space where they feel safe enough to come to me when something's going wrong or something happened, right? Same thing goes for your children. So I just want to encourage you guys to take your power back by having some type of self-control over the way that you respond to the way that you feel. And then understand on a deeper level that the way you feel is a collection of things that you've been through in your past that you may not have dealt with. And because you haven't dealt with, those wounds are still open. They aren't healed wounds. And so it doesn't take much for you to get angry or for you to go into a depression or you to go into sadness because you walking around with these open wounds that you ignore. And the reality of it is until you start to deal with them and say, okay, you know, I learned this way. I learned that communicating this way and I need to unlearn it because it's unhealthy for the things that I ultimately want, right? That are going to benefit me in the long run. And, if you don't start to do that, what I believe happens is you live this cycle of, up and down and up and down and up and down. And the reason you up and down is because you won't deal with the things that you struggle with. Yeah, your mama might not have been there, or your daddy might not have been there, but now you're an adult, and anything that you don't deal with, any traumas that you don't deal with, any hurt that you don't deal with, you hand down to your children because they're watching you, or you hand down to your little brother or little sister or whatever, family members that you have constantly watching you because you won't deal with your pain. And I think the that's what it comes down to is emotional intelligence has a lot to do with healing, and that healing can only happen if you decide that I'm gonna look at myself and I'm not gonna look at the outside factors, and I'm going to be able to dictate where my life goes based on how I respond to things. Because you out of money, you do something that gets you in trouble, you got to deal with that. But you do something that builds something, you get to deal with that too. And I always say you can blame your parents for where you were brought up, um, but you can only blame yourself for where you end up. So just remember that, because at the end of the day, your response is your responsibility. Uh, I know a lot of people tell their kids, um, only you can control your emotions. Only you are responsible for the way that you respond, right? Even if somebody does something to you and you try to do it back, you still got to deal with the consequences of what you do. And I think a lot of people ignore that because they say, oh, he did it or oh, she did it. But at the end of the day, if you don't deal with it, if you don't, I mean, not if you don't deal with it, if you don't figure out how to respond to it in a way that is positive for you, you still got to deal with the consequences of whatever decision you made. If that decision lands you in jail, if that decision lands you with a baby, if that decision lands you with an STD, if that decision lands you in a divorce, if that decision lands you with a broken nose, like even if they started it, you still got to deal with it. And until you realize that the way you deal with those things will either push you forward or knock you back down. And I think that's where a lot of people get that. Oh, 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. Yeah, them 2 steps forward is because you decided to put something in place and you started moving in motion. Then something happened and you didn't feel good and you responded to that and now you 1 step back or 2 steps or 10 steps back because you refuse to deal with yourself. And at the end of the day, bigger than everything, when it comes to parenting, and it's a little off topic, but when it comes to parenting, you can only parent what you're parenting yourself, right? Anything that you see in your children, if they're angry, if they're frustrated, if they don't know how to self-soothe, if they walk around here going into depression, they up and down. A lot of that come from what they see, and you can't teach them how to do it or deal with it until you start to deal with it. So man, keep that in mind because at the end of the day, guys, I think I think the power to grow our lives start with the decisions we make, with the perception we choose, and until you take full responsibility of everything that's in your life. I am here because of the choices I've made. I am I am here because of the decisions I made, whether that's successful or unsuccessful, or you're good in one area and not so good in another area. It all comes down to you taking full responsibility of your decisions, how you respond to things, and how you perceive things, and then on top of all of that, how you're going, whatever you're going to do, making sure that you're being responsible and not responsive. Keep that in mind, y'all. That's my session for today. Y'all have a good day and God bless. Peace.